Hello, everyone. Thank you thanks for coming out this beautiful afternoon. We're having a great day today. The clouds, the sky's nice and blue. All the humidity's gone, and it's not raining. So I'm happy to have an afternoon without the rain. We're here at Melissa's Momma G's farm. Melissa in Farmer John's place, and thank you for allowing us to stop by and have our meetings here.
So just to give everybody kind of a flow of our evening, my name is Chris, so I get to share a little bit tonight. The flow of our evening tonight, I'm going to run my mouth for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to interview three good friends of mine to kind of spotlight what they're doing in the permaculture world. One, because I love hearing what other people are doing. And I think it would be an amazing time to literally pass a microphone around and just hear the stories of the different farms and the different homesteads, the different churches, the different groups, the different patios on apartment complexes that are doing food and agriculture and permaculture, because it looks so different for each and every one of us in the journey. So tonight, we're gonna revisit an intro to permaculture, which I know for some of you is almost like rewinding a little bit, but I think for me personally, I find sometimes it's good to take a step back and remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. And for me, a lot of times, this is true not only in the farm, but even in the workplace. I lived in Kansas City, Missouri for 17 years, and during some of that time, I ran a wedding venue. And the last year of owning this event space, we did 72 weddings. That does not include all the other things that we did, but 72 weddings. If you've ever planned one wedding, you know that is a little overwhelming. And I remember about halfway through the year, I was like pulling my hair out by the roots, and I had to step back and go, why in the world am I doing this? And go back to that foundational baseline reason, because at the end of the day, I'm gonna lose my sanity if I just keep doing the stuff. I'm gonna be exhausted, I'm gonna be tired, I'm gonna be temperamental, I'm gonna be all of those things if I don't remember my why. And if you have been on a farm, lived on a farm, or even next door to a farm, you know how challenging it is just to keep up with the stuff and the never-ending to-do list. Some of you know I put out a monthly to-do list, and I publish it because it's my list, and if it's helpful to you, great. If it's not, delete it. And I finally had this friend a couple months ago that was like, can you just tell me from that wonderful, really long, obnoxious list, can you just tell me the three things that are the most important that I need to get done? Because I love the list. I love your zeal, but I just need three things. And if I can accomplish those three, what are the ones that I can get done that month? And as I was listening to that question, at first I was kind of chuckling, and then I kind of had to admit to myself, I don't even do every single thing that's on my own to-do list every month. It's kind of like a guide map to just remind me along the way of the direction that I need to be going. Here's the important things to do every month. But really, the three ethics of permaculture are kind of like that true north on a compass that reminds us the general direction that we kind of all need to be going. And I think as busy farmers, as busy homesteaders, as parents, as teachers, as entrepreneurs, going back and revisiting our why kind of helps us stay sane. And it reminds us of the importance of what it is that we're doing. So there are notes here on the screen. If you are following along online, these will be overlaid into the presentation later on. But I want to talk a little bit about why the 7 tenets. And then instead of me randomly telling you about them, I want to interview the people that are really doing it and spotlight some of the things that they're really doing. So for me, when I look at the 3 tenets of permaculture, earth care, people care, fair share, this is really the common ground where we all connect. I mean, the reality is for the 70 or 80 years of our lives that we're here, we are sharing the same space on a giant revolving rock. Whether or not that rock is flat or round is up to everybody's interpretation at this point. Let's not even go down that bunny trail, but we are on a rock together for a limited 70, 80, or whatever year amount of time. So there is a common space that we are sharing. And so, I'm a big history nerd and I love going back. I remember when I was doing my herbalist training, my favorite part was not even talking about the uses of the plants, but it's how did the native people groups utilize those plants? And what was the history in the indigenous tribe of the way that they used dandelion root? Because when I grew up, dandelion, you didn't eat the root and you couldn't eat any of it because that white sap was poisonous. Did you ever all hear that from your, that's what I was taught growing up. Well, don't touch the white sap, it's poisonous, it'll kill you. And now I'm like, eat the whole stinking thing. I'm finding out all these other benefits. But then when you look at the indigenous people groups that were in North America and the way they utilized the root and then the stem and then the leaves and the sap and then the flower, there's layers upon layers of history. And so one of my favorite things in the herbalist school is going back and studying the notion of not just the plants, but the use of water in indigenous tribes. So when you go back to ancient Mesopotamia or the Fertile Crescent, the well, the place of water, was the gathering place for people. And it's like, you never know who you're going to find at the well or the coffee shop of the day. It could literally be, a Jew, a Palestinian, a Samaritan, a Native American, an Australian. It could be, who knows who you're going to meet at the well. The well's common ground. Everybody's coming to the same spot. We're using the bucket. We're getting out that water. Now here's the real humdinger. How are you utilizing that water? Now that's up for a lot of interpretation. Now somebody coming to the well is going to say, I need to use this water for cooking. Somebody else is using the same type of water to flush their toilet. Somebody else is using it to feed animals and livestock or to water their echinacea, or they're using it to just douse their kids because, hey, it's just funny today. There's a lot of interpretation of how we're utilizing that water, and sometimes the use of that water is very innocent. Sometimes it's making water balloons to throw at people from the balcony overhead because we're, little kamikaze ancient terrorists, trying to, terrorize the neighbors. So it's like the way we utilize water really does vary. So doesn't mean that it's safe. I was an English and history teacher, so I love C.S. Lewis. And so when they talk about Aslan the lion, it's like, he's a lion and he's wild and he's not tame, but he's safe. There is a safety around that lion, even though he's wild, even though it's crazy, even though it's tumultuous. And when we look at land and nature, there is a safety, and we look out into Melissa's beautiful food forest, and it's relaxing. And the wind is blowing in a rather nice way, especially literally as I just said that, a really nice way right now. But all of a sudden, if a hurricane comes through, the wind and the water turn not so safe. Just that little bit of a change determines the way that it's utilized. And so I was looking the other day, because I'm a big nerd. I love plants, I love books, I love rocks. I love all these things. And I was looking the other day at this rock, and I was like, there's so many ways that you could look at this one thing. And depending on how I pass this around the room, there could be 40 different interpretations of how this thing is used. A kid is going to look at this and go, whoa, cool rock. I like the color. An artist is going to look at it and talk about the way that it was shaped, the way that it was molded, the way that it was, hewed down to this exact spirally, fiery shape. You get somebody else that looks at it and they're going, oh, it's, the energy is really adjusting my third eye chakra. I don't know all about that stuff, or whatever chakra that it is, and it's promoting this energy. A Judeo-Christian looks at it and goes, oh, that's carnelian stone. That's the stone that surrounds the throne of Yahweh. That's a lot of interpretation from just a rock. But the reality is, at the end of the day, we may not agree whether this rock is used to just set down and appreciate, or does it have energy, or does it adjust your whatever chakra, or is it just pretty? But the reality is, we can gather around a rock and we can appreciate it for what it is. We can gather around an avocado tree and go, hey, there's some value, especially to Brogdon and Winter Mexican, two of my favorites. I'm not promoting those two, but I'm totally promoting those two. So it's like we can gather around plants and find common ground. And so I think what's important with these three tenets is these are places for us to realize here's the common ground and why we're doing what we're doing. This is why we spend so many hours a day dealing with or connecting with, depending on how you're looking at it, chickens. I could spend 6 hours a day interacting with chickens. My neighbor next door could spend 30 seconds and they are done. And I could literally spend 30 seconds just picking up a feather and staring at the colors and the way it reflects in the sunlight on, just the feather. The same is true with a tree, a plant, a shrub, a bush, whatever it happens to be. So when we look at these three aspects, let's go back to the why. Why these things in permaculture? Because I know for me as a permaculture designer and as a permaculture teacher, I could talk to you for days about the elements of design or capturing solar energy, the uses of moringa, or the uses of any of those plants on the table. But I get tired. But what does keep me going is remembering my why. What fuels the fire at the end of the day? And so of those three values, earth care, people care, fair share, for me personally, the people care seems to often be the most important. It's like I can't take care of my garden or feeding the neighborhood or the world if I can't take care of myself or my family. That there is something about people that does have value. And for every permaculturist, that's going to look different. Some of you are parents that have children, so those little humans that you are caring for is going to look different than someone that's a single 42-year-old man. I don't have kids that I'm caring for on the daily basis, which is probably why I hang out with chickens for 6 hours a day, So it's like our aspect of how we walk out, people care, is going to look a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, people need to be cared for. They need to be cared for in their mind with their mental health and looking at how are we doing up here? Are we checking in and realizing, am I stressed? Am I anxious? Am I acting out of compassion? How am I doing in my body? Am I eating not just food, but am I eating the right foods? Am I taking the right supplements? Am I giving my body the building blocks that it needs so that I can serve other people well? I need to be cared for in my spirit. And now I don't need to get into whether you have a Judeo-Christian outlook, a Muslim outlook, or a Navajo Indian outlook. That doesn't really matter. What matters at the end of the day when we're talking about these three tenets is the spirit does need to be cared for. My mind needs to be cared for. My body needs to be cared for. And my will and my emotions need to be cared for. Both the emotions that I have internally and the ones that I'm expressing. Because the reality is that the way I care for myself is also going to dictate the way that I'm able to care for others. If I'm not able to care for my own mind, how in the world am I going to be a teacher at a school and care for the minds of 25 other kids or teenagers? If I can't take care of my own body and give it what it needs in exercise, in stretching, in nutrition, how in the world am I going to help someone as an herbalist be able to determine what's going to be helpful for their body and their human frame? So I think as permaculturists, when we look at people care, I think it's important for us to look at all of those different aspects of this type of care. Now, as you're listening to me ramble for the next couple of minutes, I would ask you to consider, what does this look like for you in your sphere of influence? Whether that sphere of influence is your job, your family, your school, or your one pet chicken or hamster, you still have a sphere of influence. So what does caring for others look like for you in your small sphere? Now, likewise, when we look at the other aspects like fair share, there's a lot of ways to look at fair share. I think a lot of times when we think of fair share in permaculture, the natural proclivity is money. Does permaculture produce dollars? Well, maybe, maybe you're gonna sell those herbs or your teas or those avocados and it's gonna make you a few bucks. But I think there are other ways to get a fair share, a return on that investment of your time and energy that may not just be dollars and cents. It could be the fair share is edible abundance, i.e. food. If you're spending 6 hours a day gardening and you're not eating out of that garden, beloved, why are you gardening? Get a new hobby that's cheaper. We've all done the $80 tomato thing, am I right? We've all done it. We've all had the tomato plant on our patio that's like, this is the heirloom that I got from Baker Creek Seeds, and I spent $7 for 3 seeds. And then you literally buy a bottle of fish emulsion, and then you buy the humic acid, and then you buy the bone meal, then you buy the blood meal. And then all of a sudden, those stupid hornworms show up, and then you're buying the neem oil. And then after you buy, you know what I mean? We've spent $80, and at the end of the season, we get that one tomato, and everybody better eat this and like it. You know what I mean? We've all done the $80 tomato. And if that's where we want to end up at the end of the day, great. I don't know about you. I would love to spend $80 on something more than a tomato. So I think it is important for us to go, what is the return on my labor? Is that dollars? Is it food? Or maybe it's a knowledge transfer. Because sometimes if you're doing that tomato, $80 tomato, sometimes it's worth it if you're teaching kids in your family how to garden. And if that tomato is their favorite thing of the summer, that is the best thing you could have spent $80 on. That is a worthwhile investment. Now, it's not coming back to you with interest in dollars and cents, and it's not gonna add into your Roth IRA, but it's worth it. There is a return. So sometimes it's in knowledge, sometimes it's in goods, sometimes it's in relationship. For me, I grew strawberries when I lived in Kansas City, not even because I ever got to eat the strawberries. My neighbor kid was the most precious kid on the planet, and he was obsessed with strawberries. I'm talking December in Kansas City, Missouri, there's 8 inches of snow, and he's next door going, hey, Mr. Chris, when are the strawberries gonna be ready? He is ready to have those strawberries like right before Christmas. So to me, it's like, I'm gonna spend whatever it takes to grow those strawberries so little Richard can come over and enjoy those strawberries. Because it's a connection with him, with his siblings, with mom and dad, who we still talk to this day. It's been 6 or 7, however many years since I lived next door to them, and they still come and visit in Florida, once a year, just to come and say hello and to reconnect. But it starts over strawberries. So for you, what are you growing in your backyard that is your connection? And it might be your moringa tree. It might be your strawberries or your herbs or your tea, or maybe it's the eggs that you share with your neighbors. Now, right now for the summer, I'm staying on the edge of the St. Johns River for the summer as I'm between farms. And I was looking at the other day, I'm like, all right, I brought 30 chickens with me, because you know me, I gotta have my girls. So I brought my chickens, my little 2 harems of chickens with me, and I got my girls there for the summer, and I've got this like little egg ministry going on of like every day a different neighbor, get some eggs, and on one side, gorgeous $1 million houses. On the other side, we'll just say it's a trailer park, and they're probably growing other herbs that we can't talk about on social media. And so it's like, big spectrum. And the other day I was like, why are the eggs a big deal? I feel like it's a big deal. Like my gut tells me, my mind tells me, my heart tells me it's a big deal. And I was thinking through it, and I Googled benefits of eggs. And one of the things that I found in there was that eggs is one of the best ways to get NAC, N-acetylcholine, which is one of the precursors to glutathione. So if you don't know what that means, it helps you with the aging process, with memory, and helps navigate people with addictions. So if you're struggling with alcoholism, drug addiction, withdrawal, whatever, the best food that you can eat are eggs if you want to get over it. And at the end of me Googling that, I was like, man, that's why I'm doing eggs. Like, to give these addicted neighbors some eggs. And I had no idea all summer I'm delivering eggs to all these neighbors and going, God knows what's going on, across this neighborhood, but I got this little egg thing going on. And I think at the end of the day, that matters. At the end of the day, your moringa tree, your mango tree, those avocados that you're sharing with your neighbors, those really do matter. That $80 that you spent on the tomatoes so your kids could watch the process, that just really matters at the end of the day. So the last one, so we did the people care and fair share. The last one is earth care. For me, this is the one I get excited about because I love dirt, I love soil biology, I love studying all of the things. But I'll be honest, I'm still learning how much I don't know. Like last year, I watched a couple classes by Dr. Elaine Ingram, who does a lot of work with soil biology. And I thought I was really smart until listening to this lady, and I was like, I feel like a seven-year-old right now. Like she's talking so far over my head. There's so much that I don't know. Even the gurus on the internet that we see don't really know that much. Really don't know that much. I mean, you think about in the university setting, 25 years ago, let's be really honest. If you went to ag school, they were talking about soil biology by saying you need NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. If you want good soil, those are the three things that you need. Great. So then we started doing, hydroponics and just adding in pure synthetic nitrogen. Now what's interesting is you will get big, beautiful tomato plants. But if you take a Brixometer that studies the sugars and the color content, and you look at the Brix rating, from a soil-grown tomato versus one grown just in a synthetic solution, there's a major difference. I'll let you determine which one was going to be exponentially higher and what one was anemic and why in the world am I even wasting my time on this. Well, come to find out, microbes in the soil are important. No duh. But where in the world were you going to go to learn that 25 years ago in ag school? Most schools were not teaching that, most of them. Some, University of Illinois, probably, University of Seattle, Washington, Baltimore, Maryland. Pretty much those were the top three schools that were kind of getting into the other areas. But then you start getting into the probiotics, microbial life, all of the macronutrients, the minerals that are in the soil. Not even just that, you get into protozoa and nematodes. And we're going, my gosh, there is so much that we don't know. We're just scratching the surface. The big thing right now, if you read in the social media groups, the last 5 years, is all the bad nematodes in Florida. And nematodes are they're gonna kill every tree that you've got, and we've got to kill the nematodes. Let's step back. The kingdom of nematoda is a very big scientific kingdom that there's a lot of players. And about 10% of those nematodes are what we call bad nematodes. The rest of them are very good. But I didn't realize until I went down the bunny trail, because it's like Alice in Wonderland and the White Rabbit, what are those bad nematodes doing? Well, those bad nematodes are actually building soil structure. So what they're programmed to do, these are the ones we're trying to kill. So what they're trying to do is they go find plants that are weak, non-native, and anemic. Insert all vegetable grocery store things that we eat. They're not native here. They are very hard to grow. They take a lot of input, but those nematodes' job is to go, where are the weak ones in this system? Let's kill them, compost them, build the soil structure so the real food can come out. So they're literally good guys that are composters trying to live in a composting world, and we're going, bad composters, you're dirty, let's kill them with neem oil and all these other. They're actually trying to do us a service. They're indicators of we're just not growing the right things. Yeah, grow lettuce, wrong kind of lettuce. Yeah, grow spinach, try a tropical spinach instead of, whatever green spinach in the grocery store that Popeye used to eat. So just changing the way that we see really helps us navigate the path differently. So for me personally, I've been on this journey, especially the last 5 years, when I left Kansas City, coming to Florida, going, all right, gotta have a farm, gotta own, gotta be mine. I want to take dominion and authority over the land and yada, yada, yada. And I started dialoguing with myself. I don't know about you, but I don't just talk with myself. I argue with myself. We're not going to talk about whether that's an internal or an external dialogue. So, I have real good conversations with myself. And sometimes I win those conversations. Sometimes I don't. Could be psychosis, who knows. But I was having this dialogue with myself, and I realized I am on this planet for 70 or 80 years. 85, 90 years, 100 years if I'm super, super lucky. In the context of human history, that's this. That is a moment, that is a vapor, that is a flashpoint in history. 20 years after I'm gone, ain't nobody gonna remember my name, and if they do, they're really nerdy. Like really, really nerdy. I'm here for a minute. I am not an owner. I'm not a, authoritarian on anything. I'm a steward for a minute. The farm that I'm in charge of for right now, I'm a steward of that farm for a little while. And if that little while is 5 years, 1 year, or 70 years, in the context of human history, it's over like this. But I will tell you, that moment matters. Because in that one single flash moment, you might bring in biochar that you put on that soil, and that biochar, insert terra preta and how the entire Amazon rainforest was created, that one bucket of biochar lasts a millennia. That's a literal phrase, not, figurative. That biochar far outlasts us. You plant one tree, and how long could that tree last? 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years? There's this beautiful story in Scandinavia, and whether you're in Finland, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, they all have different names of the story. It's kind of like the Johnny Appleseed of Scandinavia, but they call it the man who planted trees. So if you want to get on Amazon, buy the book. I don't make a dime from it. I wish I did. But buy the book. It's literally that big. It's 90 pages. But it's about this guy in Scandinavia who just walked and he planted trees. And sometimes he would throw a cutting in the ground. Sometimes it was a seed. Sometimes he's eating an apple. He'd throw those in the ground and he just walked. Now, when you go to satellite images today, you can follow this man's path because his pathways are a literal forest that's lasted hundreds of years. And he never turned around and went back. The man only walked forward. He didn't go back in 20 years and visit Oslo, Norway. Now, maybe he did once, but he's not going back to all of these trees that he's planted to see how well that apple or that persimmon did. He's planting them as he goes, but the legacy that he's left for hundreds of years, that's a big deal. Because there are families living under the shade of those trees that are eating of that fruit that he has never met. He never even fathomed as he's walking down that trail that he was gonna be, planting those type of trees. So what does it look like for us as permaculturists to have a 100-year view? Which I know sounds overwhelming because I'm struggling to have a 3-month view for a farm. So it's like to have a 100-year view, the only way to get there is you gotta think beyond yourself. You gotta think beyond me, my farm, my cicadas. We gotta think beyond ourselves and think, what about the next generation or my kids' kids or my neighbor's grandchildren? What is that gonna look like 100 years down the road? And what is strange, I am so less stressed about a 100-year view than I am about the view of tomorrow. Why is that? The only reason I can think of is my view of tomorrow is egocentric. It's about one. It's about me, myself, my family, my. But a 100-year view makes us go, life is bigger than me. It's bigger than my house, my family, my time on this place. We've got to think bigger and outside of the box. And that's what I think is so unique about the 3 tenets of permaculture, earth care, people care, and fair share, is because they invite us, they don't require us, but they invite us to think beyond ourselves, beyond our single plot of land. And I think that's something as permaculturists, regenerative agriculturists, homesteaders, whatever you want to call us, that we really have confronted the last 4 years coming out of COVID. Because really, in that time, a lot of people jumped into farming and homesteading. The why was pretty rough. Well, I gotta supply for my family. I gotta grow toilet paper plant because X, Y, and Z. I've gotta have avocado trees because caloric intake, and I need to supply a 2,000 calorie diet for 5 people in my family this many months out of the year. So if I start with a Joey avocado that starts getting ripe in July and I end with winter Mexican in February, this is my thought process. I'm not making fun of other people. I'm literally making fun of myself and inviting you on the journey. If we have that dialogue, we gotta look back and go, wow, that was rough. You know, I think we all made some decisions during the last 4 years that we went, that was rough. I learned a lot, you know, in that time process. But at the end of the day, I look at what I planted and I can still look back and go, yeah, I didn't plant that for the right reasons. But now instead of being motivated by fear, could we be motivated by hope, by faith? By loving our neighbor? Can we be motivated by other things that transcend our lifetime, our farm, and our chickens? I think the answer to that is yes. And so my hope is that in the next few minutes, so we're gonna interview Nalani, if you wanna bring your family up. My hope is that as you hear from these folks here, that you ask yourself 2 questions. So if you're writing something down on your phone, ignore everything else that I've said except for these 2 things. Question number 1 that I want you to ask yourself is, which of these 3 tenets am I doing well? And then secondly, which of these do I need to bring into more of a focus in my sphere of influence? So which of these 3 tenets am I already doing well? Am I excelling in earth care, in people care, in fair share? Which is the one that I'm excelling in the most? Now that does not mean you've got to be at a level 9. Your best right now might be a level 3, and sometimes, beloved, that's good enough. That's where you're supposed to be. But which one are you the most passionate about? Which is the most life-giving aspect to you? And then the second question is, what one do I want to bring into more of a focus? I think the tendency is, oh, I got to do better in these areas. Don't get down on yourself. I'm not giving you, a moringa stick to beat yourself over the head with for the next 25 minutes. Let's focus on how do we grow together? How do we focus and refocus ourselves in a more purposeful way?